Good day, I'm Jessel Brizan and welcome to our skirt sketch tutorial. This will be the first in a series of tutorials regarding technical illustration that will allow us to create technical flats, for insertion into technical packages, product packaging, and so on. Alright, so let's jump right in. So clearly we're going to be using Adobe Illustrator, which I already have opened. And we're going to begin by creating a new document. So we want to go to the File menu, you're going to go to New, and in New Document dialog box, we're going to name our document. So you want to type My Skirt. Alright, next we're going to come down to size. So we're going to be using a letter size document. So here where it says size, by default it should say letter size. If it doesn't, just click on the bar or on the arrow and select the document size. So you should see 8.5 by 11. Next, we're going to look at units of measure, and we want inches. So if it doesn't say inches here, click on the bar or the arrow and select inches. For the orientation, you want to make sure that we're using portrait. So this button here is landscape. When it's dark gray, that will let you know you have the correct option selected. Also, as you could see, the width and height would change respectively. Great. So next, we're going to leave all of the other default settings. So we're just simply going to click OK. And there we have our new letter size document. To create our technical illustrations and our flats, we need to use a croquis template, and that template will allow us to maintain the proportions of our tops and bottoms. So we're going to be creating a skirt, so we're going to be using a female croquis template. So to place our template, first we want to go to the File menu, you're going to go to Place, and you're going to navigate to wherever you have your croquis template located. You could always do a Google image search. There are tons of images or croquis templates on Google. For the purposes of this particular tutorial, I have some croquis templates here, and I'm going to use Missy Front. So I'm going to select it first, and before I actually place it, what you want to do is make sure that these two boxes here are unchecked. Template, we're going to create our own template layer with our croquis layer. This automatically generates a template for you. We want to apply our own settings, so we're not going to check that. And for link, you want to have that unchecked, because what happens is if you have link checked, it's not going to embed the image. So let's say you're working on one computer and you saved your work to a flash drive, and you place an image but you didn't uncheck link. So you go home and you open that file on your computer at home. What is going to happen is when you open that file, Illustrator is going to be looking or trying to source the location of that image, and it will not appear in your document. So you want to make sure that you uncheck that link so that it embeds the image. Great. So now we're going to click Place, and there we have our croquis image. So like I said, we're going to create our own template layer. So in order for us to do this, we need to we're going to rename the layer. Also, we want to reduce the opacity of that image, so it doesn't conflict too much with our artwork when we start creating our flats. So what we're going to do is we're going to be working with two main panels. So we have our layers panel open and we have stroke. So in the layers panel, you'll see it says layer 1, which is where our croquis template is located right now. So just simply in a blank area on that layer, just double click. It's going to open the layer options box, and we're going to rename this croquis. C-R-O-Q-U-I-S. And to reduce the opacity of that layer, you want to check this box here. It says dim images 2, and you're going to type 3030. And you're going to click OK. So great. So if you look at layer 1, it's now named croquis, and clearly you could see the opacity on that layer or image has been reduced. Good. So this is our template layer. We're going to begin creating our artwork. In order for us to do that, we're going to create a new layer. So at the bottom of the layers panel, you're going to click the create new layer icon. So there you see it has layer 2, and we're going to begin by creating our shape. So we're going to rename layer 2 shape. So just double click on the text layer 2. It'll become highlighted, type shape, and you press enter to accept that text. And you will notice on our croquis template there's a center front line going down the center. It's not perfectly vertical, so what we're going to do is create our own vertical guide. So then when we have to reflect or lay out things precisely, that is going to help us. So in order for us to place our guide, we need to go to the view menu. You're going to go to rulers, show rulers, and here you can see the keyboard shortcut is Control and R. So great. So in order to place our guide, I'm going to move my cursor into the ruler on the left. I'm going to left click and drag, and you're going to see the marquee, and I'm going to line that up with the 4-inch mark with our horizontal rule at the top. Alright, great. So there you see our blue guide. So notice that I'm placing the blue guide on the shape layer. The shape layer is selected, not the croquis layer, because as we move forward, we're going to want to show and hide the contents of the croquis layer, which is our template, our croquis template. So we are placing the blue guide on our shape layer, so you have to make sure that the shape layer is selected. A selected layer will always be highlighted in blue, as you can see in the layers panel. So what we want to do next is simply align our croquis template with that blue guide, the center front line on our croquis template with that blue guide. So you could drag it with the selection tool, or you could use the arrow key on the keyboard, the left arrow key, and just nudge that over. Right, and what I like to do is zoom in sometimes to see what I'm doing, because a lot of times from a distance you can't see exactly how, and it's not going to be perfect, but as best as you could, you want to line up the blue guide with the center front line in a croquis image. This looks fine. So what I'm going to do now is lock the croquis layer, right, so that doesn't move. I'm going to select my shape layer, and I'm going to zoom out enough that I could see the waistline, and also we're going to be creating a knee-length skirt, so I want to be able to see the knee area. Alright, great. So let's begin creating our shape. So what we want to do next is we're going to select the pen tool, keyboard shortcut is the letter P, and we're going to be using, going here in the control panel, we want to have no fill. Alright, and we're going to be using a black stroke. Great, so just going to close that up. So great. By default, our stroke size is going to be 1 point, which is fine. And we're going to begin drawing our skirt template. Right, we're going to start on the blue guide. So this is going to be our waist. This is going to represent the back view of our skirt waistline. So directly on the blue guide, as you can see, this dashed line represents the skirt. I'm simply going to click slightly above that line directly on the blue guide. So that's our first anchor point. All right. Then we're going to come down and to the left slightly outside of the waist of our croquis template. Right. So I'm creating a diagonal line. We're going to come back and modify all these shapes, and we're simply going to left click to place our second anchor point. So you see it's a slightly angled downwards to the left line. Right. Next, I'm going to move my cursor down to the outside of the hip area, and I'm simply going to click and drag downwards. All right. So you could see the outline of the shape. Right. So as we could always come back and modify it. It doesn't have to be perfect at this point. Right. My next anchor point. Now this skirt is slightly tapered, so I'm going to come in and to the left a little bit, just above the knee area. Right. Obviously, I'm on the outer knee area, and I'm going to single click. All right. So there we have the outer hem. All right. For the purposes of this tutorial, the hem is going to be straight. So what I'm going to do is hold down the shift key, and I'm going to move my cursor directly on the blue guide, and I'm going to single click. So by using the shift key, it's going to constrain the line so that it's perfectly horizontal. Great. So if you need to modify the shape at this point, you could use the direct selection tool or white arrow, and you could select any of the anchor points to modify the shape. All right. So if you so choose. So like you could see by clicking and dragging, we create this Bezier curve, so we could drag on the handles by dragging on the end point, and we can modify the shape as much as you need. Great. Alright, so this is our skirt shape. To create, as you see, we created it on a half. We want to create the whole shape, and we're simply going to use the reflect tool to complete the shape for us. Alright, I'm going to hide the croquis layer, right, so you can see the shape properly. Alright, and if you could just click on a blank area just to deselect everything, and you're going to select the selection tool and click on this shape has no fill, so it's merely the stroke. So in order to select it, you could click directly on the stroke, or if you press Ctrl and A, there's no other objects on your document right now, so Ctrl and A will select the skirt for you. Next, we're going to select the reflect tool. Now the reflect tool, typically you would see the rotate tool above it, right? So it's hidden, the reflect tool is hidden below. My own is already visible, right? So just going to click, and you can see the keyboard shortcut is the letter O. So there I have the reflect tool selected. Once you select the reflect tool, you'll see this little blue marquee, right? And that is our point of reference, right? So what we want to do is align this reference point with our blue guide, which is our center front line. So I'm going to move my cursor onto that blue guide. Right, you'll see your cursor kind of changes red slightly, and you're going to single left click. So there you have the reference point is now aligned with our center front line or line of reflection. That's where you want it to be. So to reflect this object, we simply move the cursor above the object you want to reflect. You're going to hold down the shift key, which is going to constrain the movement, and you're going to hold down the alt key simultaneously. Notice your cursor has now changed to 2 arrows, one black, one white. That lets you know that you're going to create a duplicate shape. Right? So you're simply going to left click and drag to the right. Once you see the object reflected, just simply release the mouse button first, then release shift and alt, and there you have the reflection. Right? At this point you could go to select, deselect, so you don't disrupt that reflection. Right? So great. We have the two halves of our skirt. We need to join the shape. Obviously we don't want the waistline to be curved or to be angled. We're going to create a nice subtle curve shape. Right? So what we want to do is we want to join our two shapes first. We're going to select the direct selection tool, again our white arrow. I'm going to hide the blue guide. You could use the keyboard shortcut Control and semicolon just to hide that. And you're simply going to click and drag with the direct selection tool around the two anchor points in the center. Alright, so there we have it selected. And you could see, you could tell, I mean, there are two anchor points there, we know that for a fact. And you can see it's selected by, you see the anchor point is actually filled, as opposed to the other anchor points that are hollow, they look white in the middle. Alright, so to join, what we're going to do first, we're going to go to the object menu, you're going to go to path, and then average, keyboard shortcut Alt, Control and J. Now when you click average, you'll see you get a box pop up, and it gives you the options for horizontal, vertical, or both. And we want to select both, but what average allows you to do is to align anchor points. Right, you can align them horizontally, vertically. Now by choosing both, right, we want to join these two line segments. Right, so what is going to happen is by selecting both, it's going to place the both anchor points directly on top of each other, so that when you join it, it will merge both anchor points into one. Right, so you're going to click OK, and then we're going to go to Object, Path, Join. Control and J is the shortcut, and now you'll see that it's joined. So let's test it. So if I click here, you can see it's just one anchor point. Great. We're going to do the same thing to the hem. So again, with the direct selection tool, you click and drag to select these two anchor points. Right? And instead of going to the object menu, what you could simply do is right click on your screen, and you'll get the menu, select average, both, click OK, and then you right click on your screen again and select join, and we're good to go. Alright, so we need to modify, so our object is now joined. Let's test it again, so you can see it's just one anchor point. Great. So we want to apply a subtle curve to our waistline here. Alright, so what we're going to do is simply select our Convert Anchor Point tool. So hidden below the pen tool, you left click and hold it down. It's the Convert Anchor Point tool, keyboard shortcut Shift and C. Alright, so your cursor changes to look like the tool. So what you're going to simply do is left click on top of that anchor point, right, and drag. And you like to drag so you can see you don't want the handles to be twisted, right? So you make sure that it's not twisted. And we want to make or constrain these handles horizontally. So you're going to hold on the shift key, it's going to constrain the movement, and I'm going to drag, and I'm going to create a nice subtle curve of the waistline. And there we have it. Alright, so if you want, you could probably nudge that up a little bit. I'm using the up arrow key, alright, just to give it a little bit more curve. Great. So we now have our skirt shape. Alright, so what we could do now is simply we could lock our shape layer. Good. And we want to create the details for the skirt now. So we're going to create the front waistline of the skirt, and it's a basic skirt that we're creating, and we're going to add two dots to the front. So we're going to create a new layer by clicking on the create new layer icon. Right, and we're going to rename that layer details. So just double click on layer 3, type details, press enter to accept that. Alright, and next we're going to select our pen tool again, and just as before, it's all repetition, no fill, black stroke. Right, and we're going to press Control and semicolon to bring back our blue guide. At this point, if you want, you could show the croquis layer again just for reference. So with two anchor points, we're going to draw the front waistline of the skirt. So our first anchor point is here at sideways, directly on this point. Alright, sideways, single click, and then you're going to move your cursor directly on the blue guide, and you're going to click left click and drag to the right. After you start dragging, you can add the shift key to constrain the movement, and you're looking at the shape of the curve. And once you have a nice curve that kind of mirrors the back waistline, you can release the mouse button, then you release the shift key. Alright, you can go to select, deselect, and there you have a nice shape of the front waistline. Alright, I'm going to hide the croquis layer so you could see what that looks like as well. Alright, and now I'm going to draw a simple dot. So again, using the pen tool, I already have it selected, just 2 anchor points. My first anchor point is going to be right on the front waistline, and if you want, you could put this probably you have the center front here, and you can move or place this first anchor point closer to side seam than center front. Right, so I'm simply going to single click directly on that. That's my first anchor point, and then I'm going to come down and to the left, and I'm going to single click. So obviously this line is at a slight angle. Right, if you want to modify it, you could select the direct selection tool, right, and you could drag this anchor point again, or you could select it and simply use the arrow keys on the keyboard to nudge it. Right, great. So like I said, this is a simple basic skirt, and the only thing on the front is going to be the front waistline and this dot. So at this point, what we want to do is to reflect these two shapes. So I'm going to select my selection tool, and I'm going to select these two objects. Right, these are the only two objects on this layer. You could press Ctrl and A to select all, or you could simply click and drag, just using the marquee to touch both objects. They're going to be selected. Next, we're going to select our reflect tool. So here we have our reference point. We need to place that on our line of reflection. So again, move your cursor on to the blue guide. When it's highlighted red, you single click. Right, so there we have the reference point on our line of reflection. You move your cursor above the two objects. You hold down Shift and Alt, and simply you're going to left click and drag to the right. Once you see the objects reflected, release the mouse button first, release Shift and Alt, and there you go. Right, I'm going to go to select, deselect, and there you have your front waistline and the symmetrical dots. I'm going to hide my blue guide by pressing Ctrl and semicolon. Now I did this so you could see this happen sometimes. Right, if you're working from a distance, sometimes you might have a gap in the middle. What I like to do at times is to actually join this line and make it one line. So you're going to select, just as we did before when we were joining the skirt shapes, select the direct selection tool. You could select these two anchor points on the front waistline, and again go to average, both, click OK, and then join. So it gets rid of that gap in the middle. Right, so you keep everything nice and symmetrical. Okay, great. So now this is the front shape of the skirt. Like I said, it's a basic skirt, and we always use the front view to create the back view. So at this point, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to just move across, because we're going to duplicate this shape or the skirt shape. So what we want to do at this point is unlock the shape layer. You're going to select your selection tool. You could press Ctrl and A, or click and drag to select everything. And remember, none of these shapes have fills. So this is just a quick way to duplicate an object or objects. So you're going to move your cursor onto any line segment. Right? You'll see the cursor changes where it loses its tail. So once you see that, you can simply left click and drag to the right. After you start dragging, you could use the Shift key to constrain the movement, and the Alt key is going to give us a duplicate. So once you have the duplicate away from the original skirt, just simply release the left mouse button, then release Shift and Alt. Great. So what we're going to do is, seeing as the original skirt is on our croquis, we're going to use that to create the back view of our skirt. So this duplicate is now our official front view of the skirt. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to relock the shape layer. Again, we're creating everything in our details layer. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So this is our back view, and I'm going to make the croquis layer visible just so we could get perspective. Now we do not need these two dots. So with the selection tool, we're going to select those objects. And also this is a front waistline, so we don't need that. So you're going to delete that as well. Alright, so good. We have our back view. Again, if I hide the croquis layer, you could see the shape. Right, it's the original shape that we drew, and we're going to use this to create the back view. Alright, first off, we're going to create our back dot. So what you're going to do again is select your pen tool, again no fill, black stroke, 2 anchor points. This time we're going to give it a slight curve. So again, first anchor point, and you could simply single click, or what I like to do sometimes is click and drag, so I could have better control of the curve. That's 1 directly on the waistline. And then I'm going to come down and to the left, and the dart in the back is going to be slightly longer than the dart on the front. So simply going to click and drag downwards, right? And by clicking and dragging, we're going to create the Bezier curve. So let me just hide the cookie layer so you can see the shape, right? So if you need to modify this, again, select the direct selection tool. You could drag on the handles to modify the shape, right, of that dart. All right, there you could see. All right, so I'm just gonna curve it back in just a little bit, and I'm okay with that. All right, now this skirt on the back view, obviously the person will need to get in and out of the skirt. So we're gonna have a zip on the back, we're gonna have a center back seam line, a top stitch, and we're also gonna have a vent or slit down at the hem. All right, so I'm gonna bring back my blue guide, pressing Control and semicolon. So next, what I'm going to do is, actually before I create the center back seam line, what we need to do is mirror this dot. So with the selection tool, I'm going to select that dot, select the reflect tool. It's all repetitions. We place our reference point on our center back line. See, as we're creating the back view, you move your cursor above the object, hold down Shift and Alt, left click and drag to the right. Once you see the object reflected, again, you're going to release the mouse button first, then release Shift and Alt. Great. So I'm going to go to select, deselect. So I'm going to select the pen tool, and I'm going to create my center back seam line, 2 anchor points only. So the first one where the blue guide intersects the waistline, you're going to single click. That's our first point. And you want to create a straight vertical line. So all you're going to simply do is hold down the shift key, and you're going to move your cursor down to where the blue guide intersects the hem, and you're going to single click. So there you have your center back seam line. So if I press Control and semicolon again to hide our blue guide, you're going to see what is now our center back seam line. So I'm going to go to select, deselect, so you can see that. All right. So like I was saying before, there's a top stitch, right, on this seam line. So what I'm going to do is we're going to use the existing center back seam line to create the top stitch. So you're going to select the selection tool, and you're going to select that center back seam line, and you're going to go to edit copy, or Control and C, and then you're going to go to edit paste in front, keyboard shortcut Control and F. So what we've just done is place a copy of that seam line directly on top. So what you're going to do is use the right arrow key on the keyboard to nudge that across, right, till you could see it slightly separate, right, from the original seam line. And because of the tools that are available in Illustrator, it's going to be easy for us to create a stitch effect. All right, so we're going to go to our stroke panel, as we could see here. And typically, when you're creating stroke effects, you want to use a lower stroke weight as opposed to what we were using before. So all of the other style lines in our flat, we've been using 1 point. So for the stroke or the stitch effect, we're going to use 0.5. 0.5. You could type that in the box as well. And what we're going to use as well is we're going to use a round cap and a round corner. And I'm going to show you the effect of that in a little bit. But to create our dash or stitch effect, we're going to check this box here, dash line. So this first box here is highlighted, and we're going to use 2 points for the dash. You just type the number 2, press the tab key to gap, and you press the number 2 again, or type the number 2 and press tab. So good. I'm going to zoom in so you can see the effect of this, right? Right now we have, right, you can see what the stitch effect looks like right now. All right. I think I tabbed this and created something there, which is what I don't want. All right. Good. So we have a dash line, and we could see, let me just zoom in a little bit more, and you could see the cap of the strokes, right? So obviously here we could see we have the butt cap, right, and you have the miter join. Now to make the stitch effect, or to render it more like what a stitch would look like, we're going to apply a round cap and a round corner. So clearly you could see now it has rounded the cap of each, right? So it's about rendering it a bit more realistically, right? So I'm going to zoom out so we see what that looks like. Great. So there we have our top stitch. Next, we're going to create the tops or the stitching for the vent at the bottom. Right, so like I said, we have the zipper on the back. Right, we have the center back seam line, our dots. We're going to have a vent at the bottom, and we're going to add a zipper pull as well. Alright, so to create the vent area, all we're going to do is we're going to select the pen tool again, no fill black stroke. Now Illustrator is smart enough, it's going to remember the last settings we used for our stroke. So actually it's going to do the work for us. So about a third up from the hem, third of the height of the skirt or the length of the skirt, right, from the hem, directly on your center back seam line, you're going to single click, you're going to come down and to the right, single click, and then we're going to come vertically down to the hem. So again, we're going to use the shift key to constrain the movement, and you're going to click directly on the hem. Right, and I'm going to go to select deselect so you can see what I just did. So there we have that vented opening for the skirt. Right, so that top stitching just shows typically what you would see on a vent area. Now there are different types of vents. You might have just seen this portion of the stitch line, right? But this is a different type. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to create the top stitch for the zipper. Alright, so I'm going to zoom in so you can see clearly what it is I'm doing. Alright, so I'm going to scroll up to the top, and I'm simply going to draw the top stitching for the fly. Now we already have this top stitch here, so I'm going to mirror that just for the fly, at least the distance from the center back seam line. So directly on our waistline, I'm going to single click. Actually, let me undo that a bit too far. Right, so that's our first point. We're creating an L shape, and this L shape is going to be slightly shorter than the length of the dart. So using the shift key, I want to create a vertical line, straight vertical line. So I'm going to single click, and then to close this or to close the shape, I'm going to come back on our center back seam line. So again, holding down the shift key, I'm going to click, single click on the center back seam line. So good. Let me go to select deselect, and there we have the top stitching for our zipper. Alright, great. And next we're going to complete this skirt, this simple skirt, we're going to create the zipper pull just to reference that it is in fact a zipper. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. Alright, good. And this is a cheap version of a zipper pull that I'm going to create here. So again, 3 anchor points. And what you want to do is you're going to come a little bit down from the waistline. You don't want to go directly too much on the waistline. You see how the cursor changes because Illustrator thinks you want to join or rejoin that line. So you're going to come a little bit down, which is the center back seam line. There's an anchor point there, so it thinks that you want to continue with that particular line. And that's not what we want. So you're going to come a little bit down from the waistline, and you're going to single click. That's your first anchor point. You're going to come down and to the left, and you're going to click and drag down to the right. Now again, Illustrator is going to remember the settings. Don't worry too much. We're going to come and fix that. So right now we have a dashed line. Next, we're going to come up a little bit to the right and directly back on our center back seam line, and you're going to single click. So in fact, we've created this U shape. So now to get back a solid line, all you do is go to the stroke panel, uncheck the dash line box, right? And if you want, you could use the direct selection tool to modify this line, which I will do, just to give it to modify the shape. So I'm going to drag on the handles. Alright, there we go. Now the funny thing is, as you could see, if this were a real zipper pull, you would not be seeing the stitch line going through. So all we're going to do is simply add a white fill to that just to complete it. So I'm just going to deselect everything, and I'm going to select that line again because I had an anchor point selected. I'm just going to select the reselection tool, give it a white fill, and you see that white fill is going to hide the top stitching below. Alright, and that is our basic skirt tutorial. Now just to show you what you could do as well, if you have which we're going to look at in another future tutorial, the zipper, creating a zipper pull. I do have a trim and design library, so what you could do sometimes is if you already have a zipper pull, you could probably use it as opposed to creating this cheap version. So let me just show you exactly what I mean. I'm going to go to File, Open, and navigate to a file that I already have here as well. So let's see. Right, and it's called the Trim and Design Library tutorial. So in here I have a zipper pull. So I'm going to use this one here. Alright, so just select it, press Ctrl and C to copy, and I'm going to go back to my skirt and Ctrl and V to paste. So it's a bit big. Alright, and you can see also there's no fill. So I'm going to give it a white fill, and let me just move this one away. So what I'm going to do is scale this down. Alright, and let me just zoom in so you can see that. And just as before, if you move, once you have an object selected, right, you'll see the bounding box as well as these white handles around it. If you move your cursor outside any of those white handles, it changes to a curved double-sided arrow, and you can just simply left click and drag, just rotate that a little bit, and just position your zipper pull. Right, and there you go. Right, now obviously we can see the zipper pull is kind of on top of the center back seam line. So what you could do as well is just simply select the center back seam line, right, and you could go to Object, Arrange, Bring to Front, so it kind of places it in front of your zipper pull. So again, it looks a little bit more realistic. Alright, so this concludes our skirt sketch tutorial. Alright, so I hope this benefits you guys. Alright, so this, like I said, this is the first in other tutorials to come. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. So thank you for joining me again. Bye.